Good morning and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we're here to talk about publishing, marketing, and the business of being an author. We are on the road today, as I've mentioned, so a different background than usual, but we're still here to answer your questions. And before we jump into questions, what I wanted to start with was just talking about some of the changes that have been going on in our industry lately because there have been some big things happening, namely over at Amazon. So, over on Amazon, they have recently added something new to your KDP dashboard when you are uploading a book. When you upload a book now, there is a piece during your content upload. There is a piece that asks if your content has any AI generation. And so it's got two things in there. It says yes or no. So you have to say yes or no, your book was created with any AI. Now, they do clarify that with creation, they do mean creating it. You've used AI generated images for your cover or in your book, you've used AI to write any of your book. They do clarify that that is different from AI assisted. So by AI assisted, they mean did you use Grammarly? Because technically Grammarly is AI and it is something if you've used for your book. They don't mean that. They don't care if you use Grammarly. They do care if you've used AI generated images in your cover. Now, some of you may remember that Demonza had come out a couple months ago. Demonza is a popular book cover designer, and they'd come out a couple months ago saying that they were going to start using AI generated images in their cover designs for those authors who were okay with it. So, for example, if you got that cover and it had some AI generation in it during this part of the upload process to KDP, you would indeed have to say yes, that you did have AI generated content in your book. Once you do that, there are further drop downs that ask to clarify all AI generated, some AI generated, and it gives you some options and you have to choose it. And then once you put it in there, you go on with your day. Now, here's kind of the weird thing that people are a little bit wary of at the moment is that even though you have to go and you have to say whether it was AI generated or not, yes or no, you can still publish. You can say, yes, I had AI generated content. And you may say had a little bit of AI generated content. You choose the drop down that's like the least amount because you had some in your book cover or whatever it may have been. You can still publish. It is not keeping you from publishing. And as far as anyone can tell thus far, this is very new. As far as we can tell, this is not showing up on your sales page. It's not flagging your book. It's not keeping your book from being searched. As far as anyone can tell yet. And Amazon has not come out and said, hey, if you do have AI generated content, this is what's going to happen. So there's been a lot of speculation about why it matters. Some of the guesses, because all they are at this point, we do not know, but some of the guesses at this point are that eventually Amazon may have a spot on your sales page, on your book sales page, that will say whether or not you have AI generated content. And the other thing is that there is a lot of speculation that this is simply a CYA kind of thing going on, so that if there is a problem with the content, if there is something like a dispute about the content or the copyright or anything like that, it is kind of being assumed that this might be Amazon's way of kind of protecting themselves a little bit from that kind of thing. So we all know, or you probably know because we talked about it, how Jane Friedman had an issue a couple of weeks ago where someone was publishing books on publishing different publishing aspects, and they were using the name Jane Friedman, and they were junk. They were assumed AI generated. And so that assumption kind of worked from there. And if this had been uploaded and the person said that it was AI generated, does that give Amazon different options for taking a book down? I don't know. And honestly, no one knows. Anyone who's giving these ideas, we're all guessing because Amazon has not, to my knowledge, they have not yet confirmed anything other than that you now have to, say yes or no in your books. So just know that if you do have AI generated content, be honest, because if you're not honest and they catch you, you can get your account shut down. So you definitely want to be honest, but that is causing a lot of buzz, a lot of guesses about what that means for the industry coming up. Um, and we're just not sure. We're not sure, but it's definitely changing things, and it will. I mean, we know AI has been the hot buzzword, right, for like a year now, and we know that it's changing the industry. It's changing how quickly both good and bad content can be put out. It's making some things easier and complicating others, and the industry is having to adjust and pivot based on this new technology. So we shouldn't be scared of it. We shouldn't answer incorrectly. Be honest, but it is definitely something that we're seeing. So I think it's very interesting to see that Amazon is starting to put things in place to track books through KDP that were created with AI generated content. And the question I keep getting is copyright, copyright, copyright. How does it affect? Well, the most recent rulings in court have said that AI content cannot be copyrighted. So that's currently what's going on. And will that mean that you also can't use AI content in certain ways? We still don't know. We may not know for years. Nicole's asking for writers who are using AI to write their books. Same thing applies to AI generated text as AI generated art for cover. They're still allowed to publish. Yes, as of right now, from what I've heard, for people have done that. And I don't know, maybe Amazon has, maybe that means that if they say that it was AI created or that it had part AI creation, maybe it goes through a more in-depth check. I don't know because Amazon hasn't told us. And I will say that the AI question, it doesn't ask, last time I checked anyway, they could have updated, but last time I checked, it asks whether or not the book has AI generated content. It does not ask you to specify which part, whether it was text or image. It just asks about AI generated content. And then there's like, is it all AI generated? Is it part? Is it some? I mean, it broke it up into three options. Um, if I were at home, I'd look it up because I know I have a screenshot of it. And I'll definitely follow up on that and maybe even make a video of what it looks like in the KDP dashboard. But as far as I know, everyone can still publish even if they do market. Yeah, it talks about like general sections, but it doesn't define much. And the KDP content guidelines, because of course they're like, a AI definition and stuff like that. The difference between AI generated and AI assisted, they do give you on KDP, they do give you kind of a general overview of what that is. And then there are people who have been reaching out and getting answers about like, okay, is this my cover as well as my interior? And it was confirmed by Amazon that yes, cover counts as well as the interior. So as far as we know, everyone can still publish it. But is this a way of tracking it for later if there are issues or if they change their policy? Maybe it might be. Yeah, so Danielle saying a colleague's book was taken down off Ingram Spark for AI assisted speculation. She'd written the book for a client. And yes, we are seeing some publishing platforms really cracking down on AI use. And I think it's because AI is so uncertain with copyright. Again, we don't know if it will legally be okay for AI in the future because it's still in court. This stuff is still happening. Um, we just don't know. And I think that's something that is going to have to be hammered out. AI is not going anywhere. It's only going to get more advanced, as is the software to track AI, by the way. So I think it's important. Tara's saying she's got this AI, the KDP dashboard open now, and it asks separately whether there's AI generated content for text, images, and translation. So it does ask for each of those. Thank you, Tara. So it does text, images, and translations. And I know a lot of people Even people who are kind of anti AI, I have noticed in the writing and publishing world, even people who are anti AI for writing or for creating art. I don't know I did that, but creating art or images, which is art. Um, Even those people have been more open to using AI for translation. So I think it's interesting that that was specified in the KDP dashboard. So they are tracking it. They are now requiring it. That's kind of happening, which I think is very interesting in the market today. Some other things that are happening in the market is Amazon continues to update their categories on KDP and how they work, how they show, how they don't show. Dave Chesson had recently, just a couple of days ago, had put out a video talking about the categories on AI and how some are ghost categories that actually don't show up in certain places, they do in others, how some categories like you can't rank in. So it's very interesting just to see how KDP has been updating rapidly. I think they've had updates and changes almost bi-weekly lately to their self-publishing dashboard, which when we consider, I mean, you guys, last year, approximately 4 million titles were published. And of those, I would guess at least half were exclusively through KDP, where people are doing ebooks and things like that. And so that's a lot of books a day. That's a lot of books going through this. It's very interesting to see how KDP is trying to keep up and give these opportunities, but also put policies and things in place because as a leader in both self-publishing, publishing, and book sales, people are really looking at them and expecting Amazon and KDP to be a leader in taking action on different things like AI and whether or not it's allowed. So people are looking to them, and I think they're constantly evolving because of that. Terry's saying it opens lots of questions like Pro Writing Aid uses AI. So if we edit with it, do we have to say yes to using AI for the text? To my understanding, Tara, and there have been people asking about this, anything that is an editing software that is that's not generating new content, if it is your content and it's assisting you in the sense of editing or something like that, formatting, to my understanding at the moment, that is not considered AI generation. It's only AI assisted. For the suggestion feature now that rewrites your content, that might be, I mean, I guess it would depend on how much you used it. And is it suggesting a new word or is it suggesting a new phrase? I think those are the things that are going to matter. And that is why it does kind of ask like how much was used in those drop downs on KDP. And they, here's the thing with Amazon, as much as they are updating and KDP, as much as they're updating and they're asking for more information, and they now have these like check yes or no boxes. We saw this with the adult content box that they had a couple months ago, two months ago, I think, where they really had the adult content box. You know, does this book contain adult content? And if you said no, then you were fine. But if you said yes, then you were kind of put into Amazon algorithm dungeon where no one could really find your books and you couldn't be in the search feature. But what's adult content? Because what I would maybe consider adult content or not want my 12-year-old seeing is not necessarily what someone else would consider adult content. So they put these questions out there without clear definitions or clear repercussions, I guess, or clear, you know, like this is because of this and this is what this means. And so they put out these kind of yes or no questions that are a little broad. And then I think they are figuring out their definitions as we go along as much as everyone else is. So with adult content, what ended up happening is they ended up changing that questions because there were so many issues that people were saying, well, you know, there is death, there is gore, there is sex, there's different things in there. So yes, it's adult content, but that's not what Amazon was actually looking for. They were looking to see if there was any explicit images on the cover. And so they ended up changing the question, and I think we're definitely going to see that as well. Yes. For anyone late to the party, I am in a car. My husband and I had a doctor's appointment. I was 2.5 hours away, so we road tripped this morning, and we didn't make it back in time. So coming to you from the car, I'll be back in my office next week. I should have made up a more exciting story, though, Patty. You are completely right on that. Yes, he's here. Poor guy's got to listen to me talk for an hour. I mean, you're doing it too, so. Let's see. And yes, I am having question asked about the reminder emails for Free Advice Friday and the links. So Zoom has done a lot of updates, incorporating some AI features, actually. So if you're not getting our reminder links, please go to newshelves.com/FAF and just make sure that you're registered and that your email settings are such that you are getting reminders. I think that they're just making people like reconfirm that they want to be part of the webinar on Free Advice Friday. Let's see. Caroline saying, I've had a couple of books translated into Spanish. The first pass uses a translation tool. Then the team goes through chapter by chapter. So those books, because it uses a translation tool, would have to be AI generated. But then there is like it does ask like how much AI generation. So yeah, I mean, it's affecting people who necessarily wouldn't have thought it was. Um, Mike, that would have been so much cooler. Mike is saying he was waiting for a reveal that the car was AI generated. This was all staged, so I could just make my point with AI generation. Brilliant idea. I could actually use AI generation to put a background that was not a car, but you guys, I know that I tend to use my hands too much. So I mess up the AI generation when I do that. You guys just get a view of where we're at in a little tiny town in the middle of upstate New York. Let's see. Yes. Yes. More questions about the sale. So we had talked about how the sales in August were at like an all-time low for books. Book sales in August were some of the lowest we've seen since early 2020. We are seeing that come back, which is good. Um, so we are seeing those sales kind of bump up again. I do think that was a bump up in the road. I wouldn't worry too much about it. We're about to enter into the big sale season for the holidays. Keep in mind, you guys, 40% of books are bought in November through December. So it's a big sales season coming up. And so we're looking forward to that really coming back. And also, for those of you in Kindle Unlimited, the Kindle Unlimited per page rate has been the lowest it's been in ever, I think, like since 2016 or something. It was the lowest it had been in July. In August, the rate came back up. So that is coming up as well. So for those who maybe had a rocky August and were feeling, or rocky July in August and were feeling very let down and feeling a little bit rough, just know that the book market and industry seems to be coming up and doing better things in the next couple of months. So all good things there. Yeah, it's not just you. I've had some people really wanting to make some drastic changes to their ads, or man, I need to change all of my descriptions, my ad copy, because I mean, if your sales start to tank all of a sudden, you start to think, well, what did I do? What's wrong? And it's not. I promise I am in so many accounts. I get so many sales figures from different authors every month, and I've seen it across the board. I've seen it with multiple genres, fiction, nonfiction. I've seen it with people who typically are making 10 to 20 sales a day of a single title, and those who are making, maybe more like 10 or 20 a month. I've just seen it across the board with these sales figures really um, being off. And my theory, I could be wrong, but my theory is that this August 2023 has been the first year that people, I think, really felt comfortable planning end of summer vacations and going. Of course, in 2020, everything was shut down. 2021 was still, and then 2022, I feel like people did start that a little bit more, but people were still kind of cautious about planning that far in advance. And I think 2023 is when everyone who hadn't been traveling or who hadn't been taking advantage of, that end of summer time, I think they all did. And I think that they just weren't reading. I know that when you're traveling, we all think we're going to read, but not as much. And if so, I think that it's maybe you bring a book. Um, we like to think of when we go on vacation, we'll read, but I think fewer people do than we actually think, or we are much slower readers than usual. Let's see. Vicky's saying, I use Pro Writing Aid, but I choose what to change or keep. How would Amazon count that AI assisted? Well, I think it depends again if you're taking their suggestions. So if they are just helping you edit, I think that's AI assisted. If, however, you are using the suggested feature and it's changing your words and you are accepting those and you're accepting quite a few of those, I think that would probably be on that line. But again, Amazon hasn't defined it yet. KDP hasn't defined it yet. So I think that you kind of have to navigate that yourself a little bit, knowing how much you are or are not using it. Just keep in mind for anyone who is using those suggested features, keep in mind that the technology and the tools to check for AI generated writing, they're getting really good. They're getting really good. And you can bet your bananas that Amazon is going to end up with one of these tools. They're going to end up with it integrated in their file review system. I can almost guarantee that they are going to end up with a pretty good tool that is going to give them a score or alert them if something does end up hitting as AI generated. So just keep these things in mind and do your best. I mean, I don't think they're kicking anyone off Amazon or KDP at the moment, but do your best, be as honest as you can, and be aware, but don't stress too much about those kind of small nuances at this moment because Amazon hasn't really defined it. So I think if something does happen, I think you have a case to be like, I didn't know. I'm happy to change it, fix it, whatever it is. See. I know there are AI checkers out there that can identify when something is AI generated. Do you have any idea how they can tell? So I know just enough to be very dangerous, but my understanding of these AI checkers is that it has something to do with sometimes specific language. Sometimes it's because the way that I understand how AI is working at the moment, AI generative text, chat GPT, all of that. The thing is that they are using these huge knowledge systems. That's the whole contention, right? Is that they're using knowledge systems from copyrighted work and things like that. So, but they use these knowledge systems to create AI content. And to my understanding, the checkers have access to those same databases. So they are checking for wording, phrasing, the way that certain language is used, and that's what they're checking for. And that is how they kind of pull it. They are using the same databases and information or close to it to kind of check things, and that's how they're finding it. I'm sure there are more detailed tools and tech. People could probably explain it much better, but that's the gist of it from my understanding. Many AI suggestions are almost indistinguishable from Wikipedia. Well, I'm not surprised. How could KDP check the difference? I think even if it's in Wikipedia, an author is not meant to just copy and paste anything that they have from there. They are meant to rewrite it, to paraphrase it, to put it in their own wording, and to cite sources. And so, again, these are tools. These are AI tools. They are bots that don't have the emotion we do. They don't have the intelligence that we do, but they are very, very smart and they are trained to check again for certain nuances that are so tiny that that's what they're meant to do. And so, and they're not always right. I think that's important to notice as well, is sometimes they will flag it as possible or that kind of thing, but they're not always right. Sometimes they're wrong from what I hear. So it's just all those things, you guys. And it's, again, the publishing industry is just trying to adjust to all of this. They're trying to figure out what is and what isn't. There is a lot of things starting to pop up where some publishers are putting in their contracts whether or not something could be AI generated. I have heard stories of some people not allowing AI. I've heard other stories of people who work for some news and media sites where they are now being required to use AI for faster generation, but then you can't copyright anything created with AI. So the writers for these companies are now, they can't copyright something that they wrote. So there's just so many different things that are happening because of AI. And we're all just trying to struggle to keep up, to define things and to protect ourselves, but to stay up with technology. It's just a weird time. And I think there's going to be a lot more questions than answers for quite some time. Um, as I said, KDP is going to change something and then they're going to change it again. And then they're going to get feedback that something doesn't make sense and they're going to change it again. And this has been going on, I would say, it's really been in the thick of it for the past 6 months, but this has been definitely hitting the industry for the last year. And I think that we will continue to see this for at least another year, if not longer, as things are kind of being figured out, as things are going to court, copyright, and decisions are being made. Um, what is ethical use? You know, should we have to say that something was used with AI? Should we not have to say it? And I I'm glad it's not my job to decide what is or isn't okay, but it is someone's job, or it is, boards of people's jobs. And so we're going to have to wait and find out what the powers that be decide on what's acceptable and what's not, how it needs to be marketed, what we need to say about it. I mean, in some ways I kind of think it's like the food administration. There are certain things that have to be on package labels. Doesn't mean that we can't sell them and buy them and eat them, because we do, but there are certain things that have to go on the label. And so I think we're just kind of figuring out that kind of thing now as well. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, what is so AI, by the way, um, just stands for artificial intelligence. That's all it is. Artificial intelligence. And it was funny because I was reading something and interacting with someone on a forum, a writer's forum recently, who works in technology and specifically with AI and develops some of that stuff. And the way they described it is that AI is artificial intelligence, but not the way that we've seen in like the movie I, Robot. Like, we are not advanced enough to have artificial intelligence that is actually emotionally intelligent, or that has, like, it can't just create itself. Artificial intelligence as we know it is scraping data and information from the web. It's learning from our voices. It's learning from my YouTube videos. It's learning from a lot of open sources. And it is almost, it's like book smart, but not necessarily smart enough to know how to change or react. We're not far enough to create robots that are, we're not quite there yet. And will it be there anytime soon? There's a lot of differing opinions on whether or not we'll ever take it that far or be able to take it that far. But it is certainly learning. And as I said before, it's making some things easier and it's complicating a lot of things along the way. Yeah, well, and ultimately, Caroline's saying in the end, it's Amazon's world and we're just playing in it, which is absolutely true. However, I think what Amazon is finding is that Amazon often makes the rules for their own playground, but Amazon is now in a business with things that are being governed by higher courts. And so they're trying to figure out, I think they're trying to figure out how to stay within what's deemed accessible by the law. So, what happens if all of a sudden Amazon, as a self-publishing platform, again, millions of books are published through KDP? What happens if next year there's a court case that says, okay, it's not legal for authors to have books published or to sell books that have AI generated images? What does Amazon do? How do they stay within the law? And I think, again, this is part of why they're asking these questions now, is to track it so that they don't suddenly have to come to a screeching halt or try to filter through millions of books to try to stay within what is deemed acceptable in the future. They're trying to plan, I think. Again, this is my speculation. That part's not straight from Amazon, but I do think that that's probably part of what it is that they are trying to get ahead of things, and also just kind of cover themselves as much as possible. While also, Amazon's very, very heavy on the user experience and trying to make it easy for people to buy things. That's why we all use it, right? Because it's easy, and user friendliness and experience is really important to them. So if it becomes imperative for people buying art or books, if it becomes imperative for them to buy things, if it becomes something that is a big marker and they want to know whether it was AI generated, that could end up on a sales page. I think there's a lot of ways that they could use it. We just don't know what ways they will use it yet, or even whether or not that will they even use it in the next year? I mean, it could be mid 2024 before we ever actually see anything come of this beyond them simply asking. We don't know. And honestly, if I had to guess, Amazon doesn't quite know what they're doing with it yet either, would be my guess. I think they're still trying to figure it out, but planning ahead as much as possible. So that's the big news in KDP. I don't think we have too many other questions outside of the AI. I know that was kind of the big one today, but if you do have questions about publishing or marketing aside from that, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I think my laptop battery probably has another 10 or 15 minutes in it. As far as, again, book sales are coming back up, we're seeing that there's still so many changes going on. If you follow the traditional publishing industry and book sales and things, there's still so much going on, changes going on with different companies and publishers closing imprints. I think that we're seeing and will continue to see also a big shift in traditional publishing as they adjust to things like AI in the market and self-publishing and everything. I think there's still a lot of big changes happening there, as well as happening. We talk about AI a lot to how it affects self-publishing and KDP, and I think that makes sense. But I think there's also a lot of shifts happening over in the traditional publishing world. I mean, there have been some pretty large publishers kind of say that they've been using AI to generate marketing content or create book descriptions and different things like that, or at least starting there. So it's certainly being used in the big publishing houses and in traditional spheres. We just talk about it less, and I think that's a lot more closed door. Also, I think that people aren't coming out with these big, announcements, or it's not hitting writers groups in such a big way because KDP affects so many people. Yeah, as a publisher, we're trying to figure out when and how to have this conversation when manuscripts are submitted, Kara's saying. And I think that's valid. I'm seeing more and more for both magazine submittals, like guest blogging, and with publishers, I'm seeing more and more that it has to be like there's now a question: was AI used to generate this content? And whether or not people are saying we don't accept AI content, I've seen that mostly for magazines so far. But whether or not you accept it, I don't know. I think for publishers, it could be a bit of a risk because, again, what happens if a year from now, what if it's decided in the courts that books created with generative AI aren't legal to sell? What if you now owe not only the author that you have a contract with, but you also owe someone else for using their content? Or, I just don't know how it's going to work out. I think um it's one of those things that I don't think there's a right answer, and I think everyone's trying to figure it out. And I think there's inherent risks involved in using AI, but I also think there are risks involved from being so afraid of AI that you avoid it and then you get left behind or you can't keep up with the market. And I think there's something to that as well. It is it is a crazy, crazy time. And I know people have so many questions about it. And um it's frustrating for a lot of people that there aren't clear answers on whether or not to use it. Let's see. Sorry, I know I'm moving kind of a lot, but there's no great place to put the laptop in the truck, so I'm kind of holding it. All right, let's see. I think it's important for authors to ask their publishers how they use AI and if they're going to use them on their books. I recently completed a contract with an author and we added language that we, as the publisher, would not put their manuscript in any sort of AI checker like Chat GPT for any reason. We don't do that anyway, but I thought it was smart to ask. That is actually so the Authors Guild has updated their standard contract, like their template that they suggest that people use or work off of when checking their own contracts for publishing. They have updated it to include AI learning and different things like that. So I think that's valid too. Or even if you submit a manuscript, is that publisher going to run it through AI of any kind? And how does that affect your rights? And I think free AI tools in particular, I mentioned that I had kind of a forum discussion with someone who works in AI, and they put this so well that the idea is that if it's free AI, if it's a free tool, then you are the product because you are delivering the material that's going to be used to train that free tool. If you're using ChatGPT, you are inputting your information that then becomes the information that is used to train that tool that they're going to make their money off of later. But if you pay for a tool, I think they specifically even mentioned Pro Writing Aid, is that at the moment, if you pay for a tool, with this specific company, it's actually in their terms that they will not use your information for anything like machine learning. So I think that's very important, not only when you're using AI tools, but when you're using free tools. Know that they're not doing it just out of the goodness of their heart. Usually, if it's a free tool, they are learning off of you, they are using your information. I think that's important. Keri's saying you can also tell Chat GPT in the profile settings that they can't use your content, which is great to know. From my understanding, if they can't use your content, they can still use you. I don't know, your habits or something. It's all crazy to me. Let's see. If you submit exactly the same instruction request to Chat GPT that someone else has, would it produce a different result each time? Elaine, I don't know. I suspect that it would because it's constantly learning, but I haven't tried that. Like, have everyone enter the same prompt from multiple different places and computers and see what the results are. I don't know. I do actually thought it was interesting. Someone had sent me an email saying, "Hey, I put in Chat GPT, create me a book marketing plan, like Keri Barnum would," and it pulled up some suggestions, and some of them I actually recognized from like actual short descriptions from things like blogs and stuff like that. I thought it was very interesting that, I mean, it's got a broad reach. It's got a lot of information. So, yeah, I do think it's very interesting. All right. Any other questions? I think I've got a couple more minutes. So if you do have questions or things to talk about, I am all ears. Most of the publishing news right now is really centering around sales and AI. Certainly things are going on otherwise, but that's been the big things that people are talking about, is how these two things are affecting, and of course the upcoming market with um, the holidays. We're also still hearing about the strike. The writers' strike is still going on. There's actually been a lot of drama going on with Drew Barrymore, because Drew Barrymore said that her show would start back up. And so she's been getting a lot of um, negative response from the community, the writing community, for that, because her show obviously is a daily, I think it's a daily show. But she has said she's going to go back to filming, and there has been a lot of pushback from the Writers Guild and the communities there. Um, I've heard, and when we had Anna Termini on the show a couple of weeks ago, I've heard that it's kind of expected that this might keep going until October, November at the earliest, and it may even go into 2024. So we'll see a backup of, manuscripts not being sold to option to film. We'll see films not being made or shows not being made, streaming, lots of things, that it will actually push out this industry probably a good year. So things will be backed up, and it might be hard to sell manuscripts to be optioned for film. It'll be harder than usual for probably a year. So everything's interconnected. It all definitely affects each other, which, that's how it works. All right, you guys, I think we covered a lot today. I am going to cut this just a little bit short because I see my laptop battery is slowly going down. Sorry we couldn't do our full hour, but I will be back in my office next Saturday. So if you have questions, please email them, info@newshelves.com, and we will happily answer them next week. Same time, not the same place. We'll be on the same link, but not the same physical place here. And happy to answer those. And I did just get a confirmation of our special guest for October. We are excited to be having a guest coming on to talk specifically about social media and about using groups on Facebook, to how to grow a group on Facebook and how to use that for readership and involvement. And this person grew a group from 0 to, I think it's at 79,000 in less than 2 years. So she knows what she's talking about. We'll have more information on her coming up. But that's coming up. Thanks for joining me today, and I will see you all next week. Bye, everybody.